Welcome back to your weekly dose of encouragement. I wanted to say a great big thank you to all of you that take the time to send over a topic idea of something that you want discussed or a person that you are wanting to hear from. We always try to make sure and reach out to them and to get them on the podcast. This week is actually one of those. Several of you have reached out, said you wanted to hear from our guest this week. And so we have been trying to actively reach out and get those guests on. And I am grateful for you all for reaching out and sending those requests. If you have someone that you are wanting to hear from, or even a topic that you want explored more, we do our best to accommodate that. Send us a message through social media, or you can email us. I pray that every episode brings you encouragement and strengthens you and reminds you that God is working in ordinary moments of all of our lives, day in and day out. He is with us, and I pray that this podcast brings that to life. Hello, and welcome to the Unashamedly You podcast, a space to enlighten, encourage, and empower you to go out and unashamedly be who God is calling you to be. I am your host, Jamie Herndon. I pray you hear less of me and more of Him as you listen to today's episode. Let's grow together. We have a special guest today. She is a personal friend of mine, and I am so excited it worked out for her to be on here. So many of you know her for her amazing photography work. She travels around the world taking photos, and I know that she has so much to share with all of us. Several of you have actually reached out and said you wanted to hear from her. You wanted to hear more of her story, more tips from her. So she agreed to be on. Ashley Kematick, welcome to the Unashamedly You podcast. I am happy that you are here with us today. Just take a moment and introduce yourself.
Well, first, thank you so much. It's such an honor. You have an incredible platform, something amazing that I've watched grow through the years, and it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for that. I hope that something that I share will maybe help somebody or encourage them wherever they are in their business or their life. But a little about me. I thought about it this morning, at FPCNLR for 17 years now. We came from a small daughter work church years ago, and I came here for the school and for the church. And from that point, it has been the foundation of my whole life. I would say it even saved my life as a child. So I met my husband here. I finished school here, and God has blessed and grown my family since we have been at FPC. We have 2 children, John, who's 5, Estelle's 3. They keep us busy. And after I had John around 5 years ago is when my photography business really started to launch. So it has been blessed, just one door after the other from that point. And I'm just very, very grateful and happy to be here.
So you don't only do photography that keeps you busy. She's a mom. She also works at Calvary Academy. She comes straight from teaching my daughter her science test right here. So I'm like, how did Ada do on her science test?
I wear many hats, just given the day.
She does. But we are going to talk a little bit about your photography business because, like you said, it is absolutely thriving. It's growing. You're busier, I'm sure, than what you ever expected to be. So what inspired you to start a photography business? Kind of where did you see yourself? Why did you start? And then did you see yourself to be where you're at today?
I would have never in a million years seen myself at this level in the business. I remember even telling my husband when it was just a hobby, I would never do weddings. I could never do that. That's so much pressure. It's such a big deal. I wanted small little things where if I messed up and ruined everything, worst case, we could just do it again. But I always loved having a creative outlet. I can't draw, can't sing, can barely sew, can't paint, any of that. So I learned that I could use a camera to capture my perspective. And I fell in love with capturing beautiful light or taking something that seemed ordinary or trivial and capturing it in a way that made it beautiful. And so after I had my little boy, I wanted to take that hobby and turn it into kind of a part-time income, but also something for me to do while I navigated the new world of motherhood. And that was unfortunately in 2020, right in the middle of COVID. It's probably the worst time to try and start a photography business. But that is really where it started. We went from a hobby to how can we really turn this into something professional, make it a business. And I had the idea and I mentioned it to my husband one night. I was like, what if I really did something with it? And I really at first expected him to just say, well, that'd be a great idea or whatever. And he said, what do you want to do? And the next day we sat down and invested in cameras, computers, softwares, educational content, and just kind of put a huge investment all at once into something. And just he said, okay, well, let's see what it does. And at that point I was like, well, now the pressure was all on me. So like, I'm really going to have to work and grind this out and see what I can do. And that was the beginning of all of it, the hustle, the grind, which there was a lot of hustle, a lot of grind. But I never dreamed back then that it would turn into a real business where a stranger might call and say, hey, I'm getting married. And that was kind of beyond my wildest dreams.
So you mentioned that you like to be able to do something with light and get creative. I think that that is one thing I would say that sets you apart is the way that you capture light. Like everyone talks about your photos are light, white, airy. And some people do moody and darks and all these other different looks. Or sometimes with a photographer, I think you can get several different looks from one person, but you've like stuck to who you are, to what it is. Also, remember you talking about getting that education and saying, like I'm going and I'm doing, all these things and I'm figuring out like what kind of website, all the, we'll get more into those details in a minute. But I do remember whenever you decided that and you said, I'm going to do more than just be a photographer. So this market, I feel like it can be a saturated industry, like and it's a great industry. I'm glad that there's so many photographers, but it also feels like in even just a small circle of people that I personally know, I know several that have a camera and consider themselves a photographer. So what encouraged you to pursue this anyways? Because I do know several that have a camera and they're keeping it as a hobby because they're not allowing themselves to go bigger, because that kind of influences their decision on, I don't really want to make this into anything because there's so many that are.
And I think there's a lot of intimidation there. And that's a big factor because there's a lot of photographers. You see one everywhere. But although it can seem incredibly saturated, I would agree it is saturated with young artists who are still looking for their direction or what kind of photography they want to shoot or what their necessarily style or aesthetic is. And they're chasing all the popular trends that are happening right now. And so I noticed that the more I niched down, which felt kind of counterintuitive, I noticed that more opportunities opened. So reaching the apostolic market first, I saw blessing after blessing flow. And it almost seemed like for a long time I was scared if I put that out there, then I'm going to get a lot of negative feedback. I'm going to have a lot of hate from whoever that might not align with our values. And then the more I got into it, if I'm turning away certain clients, then maybe those are the clients that don't align with my brand or who I am. And so it can definitely feel like a saturated industry, but I would argue that it's saturated at the lower kind of novice level, and it's saturated with photographers still struggling to figure out, who am I? Who do I serve? What product am I giving? Because if I can answer the questions, why am I doing what I'm doing? Who am I doing it for? And what am I actually doing? Then I have a very, very specific market. And the more I niche down, the more opportunities just kept opening up.
I love that you said, it is saturated at the novice level, but whenever you decided like, hey, I'm going to do this and I am going to do full time, because as many photographers as you know that have a camera and that are taking great pictures, they still they have something else that they're not doing, that's not per se what they do, or they don't even claim that it's their business, or they don't even have a business name. And so that is something that sets you apart. But let's talk about you saying, stepping out there and saying what kind of clients you were going to have and that you were going to be an apostolic photographer, because you did get some backlash for that.
I did. It actually started, I won't name any names, but there were some large advertising companies that everyone knows that they will list photographers on their website. You can get on there and find the best of the best. What they might not realize is those people are paying to be on that website. And yes, it can be considered an honor to get reached out by one of those people, but they, in their terms, I was too Christian for them. They were very, I don't know if left's the right word, but they were very anti-biblical marriage. And I never did anything to, I guess, upset them necessarily. They just had a feeling, which breached their contract, but I didn't want to be a part of them at that point anyway. But you get comments, you get all kinds of things on social media that I have to go through and delete and keep an eye on, because at that point, if they just have something ugly to say, that's not the place for them anyway. You're on the wrong side of Instagram. You need to go back to your side. I'm staying on my side. You should stay over there if you don't have anything kind to say. But at the same time, if it's turning people away, if it's turning people off of you, then those aren't the clients you're after anyway.
But talking on that for a second, because I remember it being a huge deal. It was all over social media because, like, us as her friends, we were on there trying to, like, say good comments back, and it was bad. It was bad news, and I think it was probably.
Actually, I wasn't even thinking about that story. I was thinking of a different one, but yes, it seemed so big at the time, and looking back, it's just like, just let it roll off.
So yeah, but they were running you on like Yelp and all these things. Her ratings were tanking, all this stuff, and I mean, it was no fair. Just because of your beliefs, then they wanted.
I think they tried. I don't know if you want me to go on this story, but they tried to trick me.
They did. Yeah, that's the one I was talking about.
Right. They asked me to do a family shoot, and I was trying to book them. They seemed credible at the time, and a lot of people said, well, they were just trying to cause problems. I feel like they did have that shoot with someone else. I think they were legit in that sense. But they asked me for a family shoot, and what they meant was they wanted a coming out shoot for a, what do you call it? A transition surgery for their young child who had not reached puberty. They were taking them to the hospital and having them altered and wanted a shoot to celebrate. And I was never ugly to them. I never refused service, technically. I sent them a message that was screenshotted and shared that I didn't feel like I was the right fit for them. I even recommended people that possibly would be, and a lot of comments, even from their friends, were like, well, she wasn't unkind, she was unprofessional, but there was just no way I was going to participate.
But I feel like that was very early on into your photography. And I know that at one point you were like, should I even be doing this?
It was an emotional hit as well. It was a lot to deal with.
But because you stayed firm and you stood in your beliefs, now that's something that sets you apart, is you are very open and you're like, okay, I've already been through all this. Now I know that, like, I can go loud and say I'm a proud apostolic photographer and I shoot apostolic weddings and all those things. So it really played out well, but it's something that could have put you away from what really that God has given, the skill that God's given you to be able to place and to be able to do. So let's talk about what you truly believe sets a photographer apart beyond just, you said you invested in the good equipment. There are good editing skills, but there's a lot more to photography than just equipment editing skills.
Oh, for sure. And I would say a lot would tie directly into branding. And I don't mean things like their logos or what their website looks like, but their core values, who they are, who they serve, what their purpose is. People don't buy products. People will buy solutions to their problems, and they might not know they have a problem. And so it's our job to educate them to see that problem and then see ourselves as hopefully the best solution to that problem. And so can you give them a incredible experience? Can you look at their pain points and solve them before they ever show up? Can you point out what they might be and then have a solution ready for them? So what I feel like could set us apart beyond just number one, having a great product, editing skills, knowing the technicalities, knowing how to work all of your gear, all of that stuff aside, how are we treating people? How are we making them feel? What kind of experience are we giving them? Are we giving them kind of an elevated experience there? And that goes so far beyond just good equipment or our technical skills.
For sure. How did you go about finding your own style?
I began by photographing what I loved. And thankfully, because I stuck with the things that I liked most, it was easy to build and grow off of that. I loved refined looks, clean lines, elevated styles. I wanted something that looked a little bit better than real life. So I wanted very creamy, natural skin tones. If the bride's not orange, I didn't want her to look orange that day. So I wanted to stick to a very clean, classic, refined imagery that stayed away from trends. And some trends are fun. Brides love them. But I don't want you to flip through your wedding album that you invested a lot of effort and time and money into in 20 years and think, what on earth was I thinking? Why did I do that? So I started with what I loved, which was just classic portraiture. And through the years, that lets me kind of grow from that. So I'm just learning more and more about how can I approach this day where I can make it look nice and clean and something that could hang on your wall or your grandmother's wall or anybody's wall for the next 10 or 20 years and think, I really, really love that. That's very nice.
Well, like I had mentioned earlier, like the airy, the whites, that's what someone's getting when they book you as a photographer. And I love that everyone that books you knows what they're getting that day. That's something that I feel like has set you apart as a photographer is I never see contrasting edits. It's always, this is the photographer that Ashley is. These are the type of photos that she takes. Like she said, light, airy, crisp lines. It classic, classy. Like that's what you can always find with your photography. And I love that you've stayed that. That's the person that you are. So what advice would you give to somebody who wants to, maybe they're in a photography business or they want to start a photography business, but they feel like the field's very competitive?
It is very competitive. It can be ruthless at times, but community can also be really great at times. You can find everything that you look for out there. I would suggest starting with education. You can learn a lot on your own, just running out, playing with a camera, but nothing beats really, really good education. How do I do it? It takes, you go from walking into a session with a client and racking your brain about how do I pose them? What do I do next? This isn't looking good. How can I walk them somewhere else? To parking your car, looking around, knowing exactly where you're going, being able to stay there for 45 minutes and work through different poses because you have enough in your mind going to get you everything you need for a gallery. It makes an entire difference in a day if I can understand light and understand my equipment to walk into any given wedding day, any venue, any colors, any bride and groom, and still give them a consistent, beautiful gallery regardless of the situation that I'm given. And you can be given some crazy situations. I had one that comes to mind, a wonderful bride, so kind. They actually flew me a few states over. She was a Pentecostal bride. And when I got there, she's like, I don't think we have a lot of options. We had no options, just about. That was a larger bridal party, so the indoor options, they wouldn't fit. There were too many. The outdoor options, we had the parking lot. Well, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, the sun's way too high right now, but this parking lot will be here later. It's all I've got. And if you go through my feed or anything, parking lots aren't high on my list of of my favorite places to photograph, but it's all I had. So, and I knew, they've invested a lot. I flew out here. I've got to figure this out. Well, the sun went down. It was perfect. I'm like, let's run outside. We opened the back door. Everybody's giant truck is parked right against the wall where I was going. Thought, oh no, what am I going to do? So we ended up, I knew if I could get my bride in just the right spot, I had a little bit of backlighting. And that was all I had that day was the light. So with a little bit of tweaking angles, moving a car or two, I had to march my bride all the way to the back next to the dumpsters. And I was like, "Do you trust me?" And she said, "I trust you. It's fine." I'm like, "Okay." And a little bit of cropping, and you'd never know. Had a gorgeous gallery. She was thrilled with it. I was like, "Thank you, Lord." We made it through, but you never know, especially if you get to the point where you're traveling for brides venues you've never been in before. You don't know what you're walking into. Things go wrong. There's something that will go wrong with every single wedding day. We might not tell the bride, but something happened. We had the power go out once. So you got to be able to put a flash on a camera and adjust your editing and your lighting to make your flash photos look like your outdoor photos. So there's a lot of fun things that can happen there, but just being able to tackle those situations as they come means so much to your couples and the industry as a whole.
How do you capture moments in a way that tell a story rather than just taking photos? Because I feel like even iPhones are so good now. Like
For
my
sure.
iPhone takes amazing photos. I've got the new one and it's like great. Some photos make me look like I'm professional. But a photographer can change up. It's not always just about having a good photo, but sometimes it's about telling a story. Especially, I feel like especially that goes with weddings.
For sure. And oftentimes that's one of the most challenging parts of a day, especially if you're new and you're still really nervous and you're running like crazy, or if you don't have a really strong team helping you run the day to keep things on track. You have the things that you have to get done. Your first looks, your bride and groom portraits, your wedding party family, the formal family portraits. There's things that are, we have to do those. But outside of that, that's where you have that creative freedom to give your couple something that makes their day unique. And my rule of thumb is if I see it, I shoot it. So all those in-between moments when you have a groom trying to help his bride back inside after he just saw her for the first time in her gown, they're still whispering to each other. You have all those little moments that they think you missed, and it just lights them up to see later that you caught it. You've got grandparents coming in, seeing their granddaughter in her dress for the first time, and there's people are still setting things up. It's still a mess everywhere, but if you frame it right and you use a little bit of thought, you can get something that they will treasure. Oftentimes, it's some of the last good photos you have of people, especially as they're getting older, and so just taking the time to notice this person is doing a lot of hugging, a lot of crying. They have a cane. They're getting assistance. We should grab a photo of them. They might not be here in 5 or 10 years. Just things like that. The grounds, the building, all the extras that go into making that day what it is. The venue's important. I remember it might have been my first wedding. I think it was. Not only did I forget all of the in-betweens, the extras, the building, the grounds, I forgot the bride's cake. And they had already cut it. And then I realized I don't have a photo of this cake. It was my first real experience with in-depth Photoshop. And I would just be so embarrassed to see that photo today. But I patched as much as I could where they cut their little slice and tried my best to give her a photo of her wedding cake. And she was so happy. But I think she did know it was my first wedding. But it was an adventure. But they're the little things in between make that day unique. Details, you can never have enough details. Whatever those details are, the bride and groom chose them. If it looks like something that someone put effort into, it was there for a purpose. Whether it's detailed napkins, forks, invitations, anything you can think of.
I love that you said if it's a detail, then it was there on purpose.
For sure.
But especially a wedding. And that goes probably with any photo shoots, engagements or first birthday photos, or I do love whenever you get your photography gallery back and there's like a picture that you had no clue that the photographer was even taking a photo of. That's always fun for anyone to see. Like, oh, I didn't even realize that they were standing there, that they knew or saw that. As a photographer, how do you help couples preserve the meaning of their wedding day through your photos? I know that you have recently made a post on this and that you're really big on helping, especially apostolics. You're an apostolic wedding photographer. You make that very known. And I love that about you, that you're very loud about that. But how do you preserve there's more that goes into an apostolic wedding than just a beautiful dress.
For sure. For sure. So, the day can get away from you if you're not careful, and it also will get away from the bride and groom. They have so many people around. Everyone's trying to ask them questions. The day's flying by, and they can quickly lose sight. It's not uncommon. I've seen brides just be overwhelmed. They're ready to sit down. They want a drink of water. They're tired of everyone asking them everything. And usually around the first look or bride and groom portraits, they might have a small window of just them. There's nobody around. We kicked everyone else out. We have 10 to 15 minutes of just bride and groom. And I stopped them there. And I'm like, hey guys, this might be your only time together today. The day's going to get a little wild, but you have the next 15 minutes with each other. So let's slow down. Let's enjoy it. Y'all can talk for a few minutes before we get started. Just to take a deep breath and realize, hey, we're getting married today. We are about to go promise God in front of everyone to love, honor, cherish forever. And I never want them to get so busy that they lose the vision of their vows and everything that's about to happen at the altar. And we don't share a lot of that on social media. Part of it is just privacy of couples because it is so intimate and it's so important. But the industry as a whole, even outside of apostolic weddings, won't share a lot of vows. And I feel like that's because they don't put an emphasis on vows the way we do. I've seen weddings that last less than 5 minutes. They walk down the aisle, they sing a song, they're ready to go. Versus our weddings, we've got usually around a 45-minute window, thankfully, at the altar where they are taking time to make that vow to God, to the bride, to the groom, to each other. Make sure that those things are given the importance that they deserve. And there's also, when I have groomsmen and they're having a good time, I always take at the end, there's almost always a preacher among the grooms. I'm like, hey, do you mind taking a moment and getting the guys, will you say a prayer over the groom? Marriage is hard. We know that. A lot of them are already married, so they can share a piece of advice. And they will kind of sober everybody up real quick and say a heartfelt prayer over the groom for the next phase of life that he's going into. And it will always just settle the tone of the day. It just calms all of them down right then. And it's a great end to groomsmen portraits right there.
I love that. That's amazing. In today's culture, I feel like modesty can sometimes be misunderstood. Whenever you're going and you're looking for a bride's dress, now there are options that are out there. And then not even just the brides, but the bridal party.
For sure.
So how do you help portray the beauty of modesty and holiness through your camera lens?
So I would say that modesty and holiness, we know those things go hand in hand. And it is so much deeper than the surface. But unfortunately, the surface right there is where a lot of our brides are struggling because there's not a lot in the market. And we live in a society that constantly tells brides that a bare face and a full coverage gown is odd, or it's frumpy, or it's ugly. How could you not wear makeup on a day like today? You really just going to wear your face like it is? And so the idea of having a bare face is so foreign to the rest of the wedding industry that's I worry that would bleed over to our brides. But there is a regal confidence in a bride with a bare face. There is some kind of quiet, elevated, refined confidence that says, I am enough the way God made me. And I know I'm enough. And so on one of the most important days of my life, I'm enough. And I was thinking back when I got married, and there's always the ones that they're gonna toe the line. They're gonna try it as hard as they can, just in the effort of being put together and looking nice. But knowing that I was gonna be standing at the altar, I was just so careful that I remember not even filing my nails because I just I wanted to stay as far from the fence as I could to go down there and stand in front of God and everybody. And so I remember standing at the altar, getting married, and looking down, and I'm holding my bouquet, and I'm thinking, my fingernails could have used a little help today. But it meant so much to me that I wanted desperately to do it right. And there will always be people that aren't a part of who we are. They don't believe the things we believe. We don't share any of the same values. And I would just say, tune it out. Let them do their thing. You can do yours. It does not mean you're any less beautiful. It doesn't mean your day is any less valuable. You have your own confidence and beauty and importance for your day. You are honoring the vow you are making to God to love that person. That has value. It doesn't have to be covered in makeup and sparkles and everything for it to have value. It has it all its own. So, if we think about the most impactful, even on a kind of a dress level, the most impactful talked about wedding dresses in history, we've got Grace Kelly, Princess Diana, Kate Middleton, and the ones worn by royalty look a little different than the ones that flow through our reels every day. They covered up a little bit more. They stand out a little bit more because there comes a point where modesty and beauty and elegance doesn't have to be loud. It just is. So it's okay to just sit down because it's going to stand up for you.
I did something I had never heard of this being done, and no one told me to do this. But I remember on the day of my wedding, thinking, of course, things are going wrong. The night before, I was like so stressed out of the rehearsal dinner. Like I remember that. But the day of, I was like, it's so at peace. And they're like, your cake's falling because it was raining. And supposedly that's like a good thing to happen on your wedding days for it to rain. I said that probably came about because the bride was really upset it was raining. And they're like, oh, this is great. This means you're going to last forever. And just like, oh, okay, good. I'm glad it's raining. But it was raining. It was really humid. We got married September. And my cake was falling and everybody else was flipping out about it. And I was just like, I mean, it's fine. It's still edible. It's going to be great, no big deal. But I went to prayer meeting on the day of my wedding. I went into the church. I was by myself. And I remember bringing an invitation and saying, God, you are invited. Like, if you'll show up today, I don't care who else comes. Like, we need you to come to our wedding. We need you to show up and we need you to be here. And I have to say, like, our wedding day going back, I do not remember too many weddings where, we had Brother Wade Townley actually prayed over us and the Holy Ghost fell. People were speaking in tongues, crying, praying. And I remember in that moment thinking, like, God, you came, like you showed up today. And it was so important to me that God was there and that he showed up. And I think, like you said, in the day, we get so caught up in all the trends and all the things that are going on. And we can, of course, we want to look beautiful, especially for women. This is, a women's podcast. These are ladies listening. You may not be married yet and you're listening to this. Or you may be, engaged and you're hearing this right now. And you're thinking, I want to look my best. I want to be tan, or I want this, or I need that. And, like, are my nails good enough that they're just plain? Or is my face good enough that it's just, this is just who I am. This is just me. It's my wedding day. Everything's about me. And you want to look your absolute best. But truthfully, it's really not just about you and what you look like. It's about the vows, like you said, that you're making at the altar. That's the important part of the day, is there's a promise before God. And I love that as apostolics, we put value on that. And then, like you said, as a photographer, bringing that into the mix of, hey, these are sacred moments right now. And I want to capture these sacred moments for them to remember this for the rest of their lives and to be able to show their kids, this isn't just a wedding that you're getting to see, but this is a sacred moment, a sacred time. It was vows that were made before God. And these were, special times that you'll never get to redo, but you've got to live them out forever.
And I did have a story I've had, which it can, when you see weddings nearly every weekend, it can be hard sometimes to remember, but we have to slow down and think this is one of the biggest days of their life. Just like nurses will come in the hospital every day, but if you had a baby that morning, you're going to remember that day forever. So I feel like weddings work the same way in that sense. And I've had some through the years that will stand out more than others. And one I've never forgotten was in Hot Springs, Arkansas. It was not super shared. It didn't have a ton of publicity around it. It was small, It wasn't a giant budget. It wasn't ostentatious day. It was just their wedding day. And I remember right after their ceremony, right after their vows, everybody prayed and the Spirit of God moved through that sanctuary. It was it was so thick. It's like you could feel it in the air. And I had a moment, it's the only time I can think of this ever happening. I had to set my camera down because the Spirit was so strong. I couldn't keep shooting. I was in the corner praying. I was like, "Oh my goodness." And then I realized, like, I've got to capture this. I got to keep going. But it swept through that place. It's almost like you could feel the angel wings. And it just came out of nowhere. And then they wrapped up, they celebrated the rest of the night. And I caught the bride before, and I was like, I've never felt that at that level in a regular wedding day. It was incredible. And I've never, ever forgotten it. And not to say that it was one that you wouldn't have expected that, but, I guess you just wouldn't have expected that maybe. It just seemed like, a sweet, normal Saturday wedding day. But God showed up and it made a huge difference. And I would say it impacted every single guest in the audience.
What is some advice that you would give to a bride that maybe she's wanting to honor God, but she's starting to feel that pressure to follow popular trends? And I would say, even, wanting to honor God and feel the pressure, but also just in general, maybe liking a certain style. I remember with my wedding day, I wanted to do certain things. I love kids. Like, I still love kids. And they're all like, I loved so many little girls. I loved them to death. And I had 10 flower girls in my wedding. And a lot of people say don't have children. I would have been horrified to have been told not to have kids. We had Bible boys and a bell boy, and we had several boys, and I had, the miniature bride, the miniature groom, and we had 10 flower girls, and I absolutely loved it. Still love every one of those girls today. But that's something that I wanted. It was special to me, even though literally every other version was like, you're crazy to have this many kids in your wedding. There was probably 16 kids total in our wedding, maybe even 17. But thinking back, that's something that I wanted. Was it a popular trend to follow, or, was it going against what a lot of people? Yes, but it was my day. And so some advice you would give to a bride that this is your day, not to feel that pressure.
Absolutely not. It is your day to do whatever you feel with it. And if there are popular trends that are speaking to you, I would suggest, what is it about that trend that you love? Is it the color? How can you incorporate that color somewhere else? Is it a beautiful seated dinner reception with a giant party afterward that keeps nagging at you somehow? You can have a beautiful seated dinner reception. If you want the cool signature drinks, find something that you can make that speaks to you and your groom without alcohol. Take it and put our values with it and make it your own, however you want to. Weddings are turning into wedding weekends now. If you want to take all of your bridesmaids and go have a fun overnight somewhere, take them all and go. There's nothing that says you can't do that. We are not limited. You are not limited because you're apostolic. You're blessed. You're treasured. Your wedding day can reflect all of that. So you just have to figure out a way to turn it into what you want. I had one of the biggest days I've been privileged to be a part of. I had 38 people go down the aisle. We did not go outside once all day. And as a photographer who values natural light and loves natural light, at first, I won't lie, I was scared to death. And the bride said, "We're not going to go outside today. I don't want to mess up my hair." And I said, "Yes, ma'am. We're not going to go outside today." And we spent the entire day indoors with flashes and whatever light I had available. And that was over 3 years ago, almost. I still have brides call and say, "I saw that wedding. Can you come shoot mine?" And at this point, that wedding's got me, I feel bad for charging them. But it just keeps blessing and growing off of something like that. And you just have to learn to be flexible, grow in what you're given, figure out how to use the things that you've been blessed with to the glory of God.
The world that we live in today, I say this so often, but it's just how we live. There's Pinterest, there's Instagram, there's all the things, that are going on and for people to look at. So, as a photographer, how do you stick to those core values of like, this is what I'm going to take a photo of, this is how it's going to kind of look? You've got different places, different things, I know, but you're sticking to one. You try to stick to one look. Like you said, you decided this is the kind of look I'm going to stick to. Has it been hard to stick to that whenever you could be seeing all these other photos? And you had it to where a bride has come to you wanting you to take something that really it's not your look and it's not what you're used to doing?
So I think a lot of that goes back to educating your bride from the booking process to this is, I can never promise that one wedding's going to look just like another because it won't. But here's what you can expect based on here's the past 10 weddings I've done. Here's what they have in common. Here's what you could expect from your day. And usually I get a feel right around that point where if we're not going to be a good fit for each other, if a lot of times if a bride starts pulling out her Pinterest and saying, well, could you do this but in this way? Or could you do all of this but make it dark? Or try to change my editing style or something like that to match her vision, at that point, that's usually where I'm trying to explain, we might not be the best fit because you need the right person. I want you to be happy with the gallery that you are given. Here's who I would recommend. Because I don't want to book every wedding. If I'm booking a wedding that I shouldn't be booking, I took that away from another photographer who should have it. So, and at the end of the day, I'm going to have an unhappy bride. So it's a lot about education, about educating them on what's realistic and what you are able to confidently say you can provide, and then you have to follow through with what you told them you could do. And in the world of Pinterest and AI, a lot of brides will save so many things to a wedding board and have zero clue that it's AI.
Oh, wow. I hadn't even thought about the AI part.
It is a real situation. So you have to educate them. This is a beautiful floral installation. That's an $80,000 floral installation. Yeah. And so but they really just don't know. They've never done it before. And so education plays a big part of that. Like if you want your florals to look like this, here's a realistic budget that you should have to make things look that way. And there's nothing wrong with staying within your means. Take what you have, create a beautiful day from it. That's fine. Nobody says you have to go create the AI wedding because you're not going to anyway. But take what you have and then work within that. Find great people to help you along the way. You've never done this before. You're not supposed to be a professional at it. There's professionals out there to help you.
Talk on that for a second about you don't have to have this Pinterest perfect, Instagram perfect, AI unrealistic wedding that it really can be. I mean, we did not have the largest wedding budget. There were things that I got to have that I really, really wanted. Like I wanted the Arkansas Symphony Orchestra to play. We love orchestra music, and that was something that no one else had done, and I wanted to do it. So I put money in that I took from somewhere else, but I really wanted that. Today's weddings, I mean, I've told Matt, I don't know how we're going to survive. We've got 2 daughters, and I'm like, in 10 plus years, when we're looking at having a wedding, I'm like, we need like $500,000 to make a wedding now, right?
I mean, Arkansas weddings, and don't quote me on this because if you Google, you're going to get a lot of mixed opinions. But I would say the average mid-range wedding right now is running 60 to 80,000 here in the South. And I've seen that spike in wedding season to 250, 350. You're talking
Which
people's
seems
entire
insane.
Retirements, extra houses and boats are gone. It's insane. And I've seen people take $5,000 and have the prettiest wedding you've ever seen.
Agree.
So it really comes down to what are you choosing to do with what you have? And your photographer, we know that some of that weight falls on us. We want our stuff to look good. We want you to look good. We want everyone to be happy. We want to showcase the other vendors you have, which means we want the florals to look really good to help that florist to keep the business moving. But it is twofold. I would say we can make a lot out of a little, but on the other side of that, you can't be careful of looking through photographers' feeds and seeing something that you think looks fantastic, putting all of your budget into a gown and your photographer and no budget into decor, because we do have to have something to work with. And I've had, that's happened through the years where I get there and I realized where all of the budget went. And if there's nothing for me to work with, I've just got you, and that's fine. But I can't create a bouquet if there's not a bouquet. So you do not have to sell your house that you don't have yet to pay for your wedding. You don't have to cash out your retirement to pay for your wedding. The important part of the day is the vows, the point that you are getting married. Everything else is just extra. It's just a party. It's just to look pretty for you because you're celebrating. Those are all different sizes. They can be small and they can be intimate and still completely luxurious, or they can be gigantic and you don't even know what happened that day. So there's all different sides to it.
That is so true. We could talk on this forever because I know weddings, like you said, my goodness, I'm sure you've seen some big, elaborate, amazing. Tell me like one big, elaborate, amazing thing that you've seen at a wedding you didn't expect.
I was a part of the team because it took a team. It was on, I think I can talk about this here. Nobody will know. It was on the bride's father's property. It was where she grew up. And usually when you hear the words backyard wedding, you don't associate that with really big, elaborate wedding. And when I pulled into the drive, I had a gut feeling this might not be the backyard wedding that I thought I was getting into. There were multiple houses, multiple pools, multiple everything. And I get out, I'm like, well, I don't know which house to walk to. So I was sent to check on the groomsmen because I was part of the team. And they said, oh, they're out in the barn. This is rural Arkansas. I'm looking for the barn. Well, I couldn't find the barn. Well, the barn was this beautiful wrought iron and stained wood elaborate building. And I walked into the barn and I stepped into the bowling alley and the basketball courts and the full service bar. I mean, it was, my jaw dropped and I had to Ashley, close your mouth because it was beautiful. I mean, breathtaking. It was a dream. And they had like the whole glass tent, Pinterest. It looked like a Pinterest fairy tale day. It was, and they were the kindest couple. I remember the dad walked past and I couldn't help but tell him, I was like, this is phenomenal. And he just smiled at me and he said, how old are you? And he's like, and I forget how old he said. I think it's 50 something. He's like, I've had my whole life to do this. You'll be fine. You'll catch up. I was like, I hope so, but I don't know if I'm getting to this level, but I'm going to keep trying.
They don't know your husband and how he saves and spends.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, I'm here to give my husband a life because if not, he would save it all. But it was, and I think that one was up there. It was a lot. There were 300, 400 guests. There was live music. There was food I can't pronounce served all night. Multiple, open bars covered in blankets of florals, couches, chairs, you name it. Fireworks. It was unbelievable. They had quite the fairy tale story. But it was also easily the largest scale one that I had seen. And I spent the first half of the day tripping over my toes and nervously trying to figure out which house I was going to next. But it was great to see something at that level. It brings a lot of things into perspective. And like the one in Hot Springs, that the Spirit of God was so strong. It was so much different than the giant worldly wedding that I'd walked into. Not necessarily a bad way, but it was a much different scale, much different dynamic. But it was no less special than one that's, $1 million day. Because we're not all going to have $1 million days. But the things that I've noticed about the $1 million days, or even, I have not shot one of those, but like a $500,000 day, they might have, it might look all together. They might have everything, but if they don't have the Spirit of God there, then you never know. You might get an email 2, 3, 5 years. Hey, please don't share our photos anymore.
No.
Yeah. We're not married anymore. And it happens. Like, hey, can you take those down? They're awkward.
Wow.
And so it really, what the most important thing is who we serve and the values that we have, and the fact that we are making a commitment to the person that we're holding hands with.
So good. Everything that you have shared has been so good. I knew that it would be, and I'm so glad that you were able to come on here and talk with us today. What is one last thing that you would want to leave with all of us in the Unashamedly You community?
I'm gonna cheat. I have two little last things, but I have something for our apostolic brides, and that's that you are not limited at all. You are entrusted with a different kind of beauty, and it's intentional and it's refined, and it is deeply set apart. And set apart has never meant less, ever. You are not limited. You are special. And this wonderful community that I have been so delighted to be with today, I could not help but think of Matthew chapter 25, and it's the parable of the talents. Verse 25 says, "For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away." So whatever your thing is, whatever God's given you, whether it's motherhood or business or leadership, whatever talent you have, I would just hope I can encourage you today to use it. What we use grows, but what we bury is lost.
Thank you so much for sharing that inspiring and encouraging thoughts that you gave all of us. And I know that someone that's listening to this, if you are in photography at all, I know that you've been encouraged. I pray that you brides that are listening to this, if you are getting married soon or if you are getting married in the future, that you have found something today that you can take some value away from this podcast. Thank you all for being a part. Thank you so much, Ashley, for being on today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to another episode on the Unashamedly You podcast. This information will be in our show notes, but if you want to reach out to Ashley, email her over at info@ashleykematick.com. She's online at ashleykematick.com, and she is on social media on Instagram with Ashley Kematick. So go look her up, follow her. I know that you all were inspired by something that she said. She takes amazing photos. Go follow her. You will love to follow along with her journey. Thank you again for listening to another episode and for being with us week after week. It means more than you know. Go be unashamedly you.